Hello, folks. This is Mary Buckham, and I've opened the classroom 5 minutes early here so people can get in, get comfortable. If you have any specific questions you've come up against that you want, I have a chance to answer it. We have 5 minutes before class starts, and we move forward. As you get into your comfortable position, go ahead and just let me know you're on board. And we will start digging into our literally on day 3, which is, since we don't have a lecture at 2.5, this is halfway through writing your novel. So Sarah's here. Lovely to see you. And Judy is here. Tammy Trail, thank you for checking in. Yvette is here. Good job, folks. And Claudia. Again, if anybody has any questions that can be answered quickly, I can do it now, or we can wait until after the actual lecture portion of the today. Sarah, word count question. If I'm between a novel and a novella, what do I plan for? There's a huge difference between a novella and a novel. Novels are usually starting at 55,000 and longer. Novellas usually are between 25. So you want to be aware that additional 25,000 words that you'll have for the novel, you don't get to do in the novella. So plan it from either one, plan it from both. It gives you experience. So say, okay, if I was doing this as a novella, this is about where this would have to be happening. But if I wanted to spend more time and develop it into a novel, where would it be happening? So what kind of stuff could go in between? So that's a great question. It's great practice to try both and see where it is. Okay. Tammy says, I didn't get challenge 2 done yet. That's okay. I haven't gotten to most of them either. So don't worry. We have this week. The sooner you post it, the sooner you get feedback on it to build on it. And I'm not going to slap your wrist or anything else if you don't get it posted within a time. I may not get to reviewing it, which is most likely because I'm still working on the first day's questions. So Jade's on board. Tessa is here and under her own name. Yay, it's going to be a good day. Okay, Claudia, you're saying something about in the HV2. Is that a place or mean something else? Is it something that I need to be paying attention? Jade is up where it's going to get almost blistering warm 10 degrees. So love you, Jade, but I don't think I'll be visiting anytime soon. Corrine is on board. Connie, okay, can only be here for the first couple minutes, the first 15 minutes. Texas is here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, first 30 plus minutes are going to be about the lecture. Then we're going to go into examples from the previous assignment. And I just randomly chose people that I didn't choose the first day to see how we're doing. So what we're going to be looking at here is the function of it. I call them twist points because, for one thing, a lot of writers use the term plot point to mean a lot of different things. You know, it's like the word beat, that some people mean this and some people mean that. But a twist point are the three places in the story that things start changing the character. So if you have a piece of paper and you wrap it up and you just kind of wrap it lightly, you can smooth it out. So at the quarter of the way into the story, the person can go back to being the person they were at the beginning of the story, with their fears, they haven't faced them, with their reasons for not falling in love. So that's the first twist point or plot point. It's day 2 in our world. But today we're going to be talking about the second twist point, and that's the midpoint of the story. So when I use those words, I'll use the word plot point too, but I want to clarify that it's only 3 major parts of your story, not everything else in between. Again, the story opens at that one. The person's just doing what they're doing, feeling what they're feeling, avoiding love or looking for love in the wrong places. Yesterday's assignment was a little bit of a risk, which means climbing that hill. For me, that would probably be a big risk, but climbing that hill. So there was a certain amount of effort and that changes them somewhat. But now they have a bigger hill to climb. And that will hit the middle of the story or the crisis point of the story. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. This is a different way of looking at it, just because some people respond to the mountain, some people don't get the mountain, but this is, and then you would put your word count under all of these points. Beginning is 0, the end is whatever the length of your novel or short story or novella is going to be, and then you figure out where your twist point 2 should be 4. You know it's a twist point when there is a hard choice, not an easy choice. And the choices get harder as they move forward. And then a decision is made and a specific action is taken at those particular places. That changes. Even if the character is not aware of it, it is going to start changing them. So yesterday's assignment, and I have a couple that I pulled out just to talk with you about, is the specific action that happened about the quarter of the way into your story. That was twist point 1. What happens oftentimes, and we'll see it in some of our examples, there's no choice or decision made or clear action. They're still thinking. Something just happens to your character. Now, as a pantser, I was a pantser until what I was writing was much more complicated and I had to find a way to keep track of it all. Something just happens to your character. It's really hard to see that in your own work until somebody points it out. Forgetting you're writing a romance. Now, for those who are not writing a romance, don't worry about that. But for romance writers, you get to these major twist points and it doesn't impact the romance at all. And that's why oftentimes when I do one-on-ones with people and talk to them about their story and they say they're writing a romance, but every time they hit those plot points, it's about the external, about solving the mystery or whatever. It is a romance. Not showing your character taking a specific action. Now, once that inciting incident happens, the actions start to flow from it. It's not the same action that they're going to take, but it has to be a continuum. And you'll see that in today's exercise that you'll be given, is I have you revisit your earlier twist point 1 and your inciting incident to make sure that there is a through line, that again, it's not just something coming out of the blue. And not making it clear that there are risks to the character. So we'll see that in some of the homework today, that it's a meet, but not a risk. Forgetting that the action taken here is a direct result of the inciting incident. That's why getting clear about what that inciting incident is about. It should echo through your story so the reader can see they're dealing with the same issue, but they're growing and changing. And random action versus specific action. Random action is when they're going to get together. Well, what does that mean? That's kind of big, vague. It's not a specific action. Then the question is, after the character acts, twist point 1, which you wrote in yesterday's assignment, midpoint of the story, what then? This is where you get to develop that attraction and awareness. Now remember, the whole point of figuring out what their fear was is this is going to be holding them back. But after you, from the first twist point, quarter of the way into the story, they start being more aware. They start hesitatingly indicating that they find the other attractive, but it doesn't mean that they know that they're in love or that it's their soulmate or anything else. This is where the juicy conflict starts occurring. Because what happens when there's someone that you're very attracted to, but there's a reason not to be attracted to them? So it's your brother's best friend. So not being attracted is, I'm going to hurt my brother, but I want to go out with his friend. So this is conflict is what drives a story. Getting to know one another. Again, you don't want to rush this. It is small increments of, hey, he has a nice smile, but. So moving toward, stepping back, moving a little further toward. But it's about that getting to know, that you find the things in common, particularly if it's somebody who has hurt you in the past or someone you know has a strong possibility of hurting you. You're not going to go from, okay, I'll work with him, I'll date him, I'll something, without hesitation. Resistance. If there's no resistance on the part of the character to getting involved with this person, there's no story. We as the readers are reading for that in spite of the resistance, in spite of the hesitation, in spite of all the logical reasons not to get together and the fear reasons, they're taking that risk. So resistance matters. Complications. So again, this is why you're just not jumping from one quarter of the way into the book to the middle of the book. This is where you get to develop that. Now, we're not going to develop it in the exercises. This is to let you know what's happening in between these major 3 points. Subplots and secondary storylines. Now, particularly after the first twist point, quarter of the way into the story, this is where a subplot can start poking up, because one, you've released tension in the story by showing the character is taking an action that they don't necessarily want to take, but you also, the reader is willing to shift their focus. If you throw the subplot in too soon, You can have the character on scene, but if you throw the subplot in too soon, you're going to confuse the reader to trying to figure out, well, whose story is this? Is it this couple or is it that couple? Kelly asked a great question here. Resistance on both parts or just one? It depends on your story and how much word count you have to develop. Usually if you have both characters that are fighting this attraction, then you need more word count. So your book is not going to be at 55,000 or 65,000. It's going to be 75, 80,000 words to get in that, because the resistance shows that both of them have to change. When you only have one character who's very resistant, this works great for a novella. This works great for a short story, for anything on the small end. So it all depends on what you're writing. So great question, Kelly. Now, once you pass that first twist point in the story and the reader has taken specific action, and maybe if you're writing a longer story, you've got a little bit of the subplot after that point, then the focus shifts at that point to what might happen at the midpoint of the story, or the crisis. And crisis is a Greek word, it comes out of a Greek word that basically means things change in a larger way. So the risk that your character is going to be facing at the midpoint is going to be greater than the one at the first twist point. Now, we're looking at, this is the first or the second little blue dot was that first twist point that you did for yesterday's homework. This is a bigger change, because what happens here is that if you take a piece of paper and wrinkle it harder, it doesn't smooth out like it did earlier. So the character is not going to revert as easily to the behavior or the belief system at the beginning of the story. The midpoint of the crisis is where your protagonist, your main character, makes a strong change. So if you're using two characters, you have to show that both of them are doing this at that point in the story. And remember, there's going to be a choice that's going to change the relationship, a decision, even if there's still doubts, but they're going to bury the doubts, and a specific action. So your main character or both can realize they're getting too involved. Your main character or both can be under an illusion about the romance. An illusion is something like, all I have to do is have sex with this person, and then I won't be thinking about them all the time. Or another thing is I can sleep with them and they'll know that for me, that means I love you. And the assumption, the illusion is it will mean the same for them. Your main character or both act on the attraction, overcoming their fears or reasons not to act. That's that resistance, that push and pull. Your main character is seen growing and changing as a character, whereas at the beginning of the story and at the first twist point, quarter of the way in, they would not start thinking in terms of a relationship with the other. Why? Because their belief system gives them and the reader a good reason why they would not easily jump into this relationship. Speed bumps you're going to see. The choice is too easy to act on, so that no risk is raised. Risk must occur as a result of the action taken. Get that image of the mountain. Small hill, you can climb it. Bigger hill, harder to climb. But there's going to be a mountain leading to that next twist point. If the action is rushed without a clear choice and decision, your character is simply reacting to what you, as the author, want. And that's not a fun thing to realize, but it does happen. The action taken does not impact the romance. This is regardless if it has strong romantic element or if it is all about the romance. So they do something, but there's no impact on the relationship. It doesn't change either one. The other thing is that the illusion is ignored. Now, oftentimes that illusion is a warning sign. Hey, remember this? It's that little voice inside of you that the fear that kind of nudges you to say, are you sure you really want to get involved with that person again? Or are you sure this is the one? And what happens is it can be ignored in order to do a specific action, but it's still going to be present. Why? Because the character hasn't changed all that much yet. So the exercise, and I'm doing this intentionally. What does the first plot point, quarter of the way in your story, involve? And I'm building on this specifically because in what I'm seeing in the postings so far, a lot of people seem to have thrown out what the character was afraid of and jumped them into a relationship very easily. So this is a reminder to you to look at, okay, that was climbing that hill was the easiest step they're going to have. So, but how did doing that get them to the middle of the story? Base it on your inciting incident and include the inciting incident for clarity. Why? Because otherwise I have to go hunt through, or your classmates have to hunt through and see what was the inciting incident that got them together hesitatingly. But you're building on that. Here's an example. She was offered a job. That's the inciting incident. So technically it was the inciting incident, but the first action is she decides to take the job she needs, even if it means working with him. Okay, so it puts them in close proximity. If you're writing a romance, by the first plot point, quarter of the way into the story, the first twist point, you have to keep them together. Why? Because it's really hard to develop a relationship when he's over here doing his thing and trying to reach his goal, and she's over here doing her thing, trying to reach her goal. And then we can have another date or something. Do you see? It's got to be, in order to get to know one another, they've got to have more contact. It's a crucible. And a crucible is like where you melt gold. You throw the metal in, but it is that keeping them aware of one another and close to one another in some way helps increase the heat, which increase the melting of the gold. So it doesn't mean all your stories have to be they're working the same job, but it's there have to, because of the inciting incident, her sister married his best friend. That's going to start putting them together more closely if they're both close to their friends and sister. Here's non-romance. After you identifying the murder victim and convincing his chief officer, basically, he can handle the case. He then interviews his chief suspect, his former lover. Now, the interview itself is not the twist point. It's what happens in that interview. So he has fought to get to this position. At the first twist point is he found out his ex-lover was a possible suspect. That changes things, and he should have excused himself. But no, instead, he fought to keep this. But you're not just jumping there. You have his partner saying that not a good idea. You know what happened with her last time. So there's a lot of scenes and chapters, depending on how long it is, happening in between. The third part of the exercise is what is the next twist point halfway through your story. So it can help you if you give a hint of how twist point 1 led to this point. So because they took the job, it means that they're working together. Here's an example in a romance. Since she's been working closely with the hero, twist point 1 was her taking the job, working with him. Since she's been working closely with the hero, she's realizing she might have judged him too harshly, which leads to a dinner together, which then leads to her sleeping with him. That's the midpoint of the story. Now, it's clear that you're going to be showing things such as they are having to work together, and initially it might be contentious, but then he supports her in some way, and she's thinking, oh, well, he might not be so bad. Or he brings her a cup of coffee or that type of thing. So there's a lot of things that can happen in between that first twist point and this mid twist point. Here's non-romance. Now, he has fought to get this position and he goes to interview that was evidently the first twist point. So the second twist point for that story is that while he's investigating other suspects, he finds himself wanting to believe what she's telling him, that she's innocent, and he sleeps with her. Now, as a reader, you're going, don't. And he does because he's attracted to her and he really wants to believe the best in everybody. Now, and I'm going to say this, keep to one sentence per question, because I know there's 3 questions, so it's going to take a little bit more. But I'm trying to push to help you dig deeper into who your character is and what type of situation is going to be most challenging for them. Again, if you're writing multiple sentences per answer, it means you haven't dug deep enough. Gloria, you can rewrite. Feel free to do that because it hides, and it's clear that oftentimes you cannot see what is missing because you've got a whole paragraph or 2 there. So that's why I'm asking you to get it as tight as possible. Feel free to give feedback to one another. I'm very impressed by the feedback that is given. And you're getting feedback from multi-published authors. You're getting questions raised that are not meant to stop you as a writer, but are meant to say, hey, this is what's not yet visible. If you have questions as you move forward, hashtag QCHAL. All right. Now, the next part is we're going to go review several homework assignments. So I got the lecture done, and we're going, so if you need to get back to something, this is where you might want to check out. But there's a real good learning curve. And I just randomly picked 5 or 6 examples, and I found some very consistent issues. And this, again, never to put anybody on the spot. Here is Laura Lee's example. Angela, in her cougar form, smells his campfire from afar and goes to investigate, feeling a soul-deep attraction to him the moment she sees him. She yearns to shift back into her human form and introduce herself before he leaves the mountains, perhaps forever, but her dress is miles away. Instead, she watches him from the shadows as he puts out the fire and disappears into his tent, then silently comes forward, lies down in the dirt in front of his tent, purposely leaving footprints for him to find, and accompanies him in his dreams, still in her cougar form. So let's pull this apart. Angela in her cougar form, smelling him, and goes to investigate. Now, this, I'm assuming, is supposed to be the inciting incident, that he's just there and she notices that he's there. One, feeling a soul-deep attraction to him. Yes, she can feel that, but it's almost a little bit too easy, too quick. She can be attracted to him, but what happens to the hesitation? What happened to the fear that she might have? Second thing, choice. She yearns to shift back to her human form, but her dress is miles away. That's not really a choice. I mean, technically it is a choice. Does she stay there or does she go get her dress? But it's not really a choice that's going to change her at all. It is simply, this is actually just part of the inciting incident still. And then when we get to this part, she watches him, she lies down in front of his tent, leaves her footprints for him to find, and accompanies him in his dreams. That is not an action that changes the relationship. It is like we step away from the paranormal element and just, you have a character and they see someone that they're attracted to, and so they dream about them. Now, because it is a paranormal type thing, maybe because she can get into his dreams or something, there might be more to it there. But it really is just part of the inciting incident, which is she sees him. Now, Laura Lee, and I may be way off base here, but in an earlier post, you indicate that she has a choice to go to New York City and follow him or stay in Montana. That, I think, is the first twist point. Her going to New York after where he is. But at this point, it is simply because you see someone and the whole fear that she had in the first exercise is just kind of brushed away. And it is more a dream sequence. Louise would be scared with the cougar outside the tent. Yes, particularly if you're in the mountains and you're with the cougar. But it's not yet. This is all part of the inciting incident. She hasn't really met him yet. She hasn't made any kind of challenging choice that's going to start to change her, simply because she sees him, she's attracted to him, and she falls asleep outside of his tent, and she leaves an essence of herself there. That doesn't change and start the romance at all. This is part of the inciting incident. Okay, Erin, I pulled yours next. Inciting incident, yet another attempt on Madeline's life by a very determined unknown attacker. Clarified choice. Jared could take Madeline with him on a potentially dangerous mission where he knows he has a better chance of protecting her, so he has a reason to do that, or leave her in the hands of the police who have no idea what or who they are dealing with. that is a good, clear choice. It doesn't push the relationship too fast, too far. So he decides to take the married woman he's struggling to resist on the mission because her death would destroy him. Now, we get a little bit iffy on this one. And one thing is, deciding is not taking. It's still in the decision. If you're using the word decide, you haven't really taken the action yet. But he is, the minute he takes her along with him, creates the crucible event. It's clear that we know that he's trying to resist her. And it makes both their lives more complicated. So this is a good first plot point a quarter of the way through your story. All right, Karen. Jeff helps Jessica and her mom trim. And Aaron mentions about the last one, that her marriage is not what it seems. And that adds more complications to it. But that's, by this point, the reader knows that about her, that there's something, secrets being kept. And we also know why he's hesitating and why her death would destroy him. So that's what that whole, up from the opening to a quarter of the way, we need that page space in order to clarify these type of things so that we believe it's hard for him, even as the reader knows, oh, honey, you have no idea what you're getting into. So here we are with Karen. Jeff helps Jessica and her mom trim the high branches of their tree. He decided to take a chance that Jessica is not like his previous girlfriend. He asked her on a date. So much for the fear here. The whole purpose of that fear is that they have to get rid of it. They have to face it before they can really get love or accept that they're going to be loved or believe in that commitment or try the intimacy. Here, we're only a quarter of the way into the story. This is the inciting incident that he asks her. So there's no resistance from him at all to get involved, in spite of the answer at the first question. And of course, she's not going to be like his previous girl. How does he decide this so quickly? This is more part of that, what's happening between the opening and the first twist point is this. He'd like to ask her on a date, but this is where then the backstory of why he has the fear that he does. But right here, it's like, I've been hurt in the past, and yet, oh, she's kind of nice. I'll ask her for a date and we'll move forward. Her asking him, I'm trying to see here. Okay, Sandra says that. Yes, Sandra is the one. If she asked him, that should set off his, let me think about it. He doesn't have to say it flat out, no. Karen says, should I have her ask him to go to something? Yes, but don't let him just jump into it. Let him revisit with his good buddy, his friend, his diary, whatever you want. But his date or not, if he asks it or if she asks it, and if he wants to ask it but doesn't. So again, look at your word count, Karen. Look at what this sounds like. It's just happening real close to the opening. If you're doing a very short story, 10,000 words, 15,000, you got to rush things. But this rushes it for too much for a novel or a longer story. So there's more development here. And the reason you're keeping that word count idea around is to help you say, hey, I'm doing this at 2,000 words, but it actually should be happening at 7,500 words. So I'm rushing it. Because this is why I put a question mark. The fact that he's helping them is the meat. He asked her on a date. He has a choice. Decided to take the chance. It's not like it's just too rushed on it. So Karen, what is the word count of your story? Could you share that? Because if somebody can that quickly jump into, this is the thing, is that the attraction that we have to another person, okay, about 55,000. I'm going to call it 50, and then you can add a few more thousand words in there. Okay, 50,000 words. Middle point of the story is 25,000 words. Quarter of the way into the story is 12,500 words, roughly. It's not down to 1 or 2 pages. It's in that area. So does this happening at that point, the inciting incident is what he's going to do. Is he going to go on that date, which is the first twist point? But this is asking her, he's too quick and decides too easily that she's not like the former love interest. Does that make sense to you? So you have 12,000 words to use between the opening of the story and getting to this point in the story. Is that, it is the date itself that's really going to start changing the relationship. Okay, Karen gets it. Yay, gold stars, Karen. All right, here we go with fantasy romance. Triggered by grief after the death of her great aunt, the harbinger inside Lexi Landry manifest. Lexi must choose to give the herald, a godlike being, control over her body or fight to retain it. She and the local werewolf pack, Alpha, join forces to tame the beast within her and realize they are perfect for each other. This is a little bit, it could be the inciting incident. It could be happening a quarter of the way into the story. But her choosing, this is about, is she going to let this herald take over or not? It has nothing to do with the romance. And then this part is where it gets rushed again. That they very quickly, we're only a quarter of the way into the story. So they join forces to tame the beast and realize they're perfect for the other. So if they're perfect for another, what's going to hold them back from each other? That's the whole intention of that fear we looked at. Jan, are you here in the class? Because again, I'm going to do exactly what I did with Karen. Since this is a fantasy romance, the fantasies tend to be longer because you're doing some world building, etc. So the average fantasy, if it's not a novella, might be 75,000 words. So I'll do to 80 because math is not my forte. So middle of the story is 40,000 words, but this event happening is at 20,000 words. So at 20,000 words, you've already broken down all the barriers between them. Now, it is a tendency in us, particularly as women, John and Michael, and it's easy for us to jump in and get rid of the conflict. That's exactly what happened. All right, so I think, okay, Robert gives a suggestion. She joins forces, but distrusts them. So again, is that joining forces the action? And this is where it doesn't seem specific enough. And this is where we can get ourselves in trouble. So if she's still wary of him and they decide to do a particular ritual or something, but that the fact that it was, they realize they're perfect for each other, who just took it out of a romance. It took it into a very short story, because if they know they're perfect for each other, but what's keeping them apart? So Jan, you may want to look at this if you get to it in the replay, and consider, look at those word counts, look at where this is going on. Don't make it too quick. Okay, here we go. Her father putting hands on her, keeping her captive, demanding she marry a stranger in a month. Now, this is the inciting incident. Go along with his demand or escape and flee, leaving current life immediately behind. This is still part of the inciting incident, actually. Yes, there is a choice there, but until she meets, it's a romance, until she meets the other, this does not going to, the choice has nothing to do about the relationship. She slips the guards and escapes, going on the run to find a safe place. So that is, it could be quarter of the way through the story, but look at your word count. To me, this might be the inciting incident all jammed together. But it doesn't get her with him or her with her in any way. Aaron points out, so could Claudia give the character a second choice to accept the help of a stranger? That starts changing the things. So her going on a run is a reaction to what her father did. Oh, Claudia, if I'm doing a novella, I bet it's part of the inciting incident. Again, novella, 20, 25,000 words. Look at what's happening. But the action that's going to change her is going to be when she meets him and has a choice to let him help her or go trust him or something. Again, go back to your, what is she afraid of about love? Okay, she does have a friend helping her, but the friend is not the love interest. So that's what I'm concerned at, is that, okay, she's escaped from home. That changes her personal life. And if there was a non-romance, that might be enough. Because in between here, she's, should I do this? Should I not do this? Someone says, absolutely do it. And someone else says, absolutely don't do it. It makes her really wonder. And then she goes off. Non-romance, not a problem. But if it's a romance, okay, her meeting her love interest soon, meeting doesn't change it. It's what happens because she meets him that becomes that first twist point. You're just setting up, the inciting incident is setting up this meet, but it is what does she do when she meets him is actually the thing that's going to change her, because it is a romance. Okay, does that help? Jade says, I thought you said yesterday that the inciting incident and choice and action didn't have to be related to the romance if writing a longer romantic mystery. If you are writing a mystery, whether it's a long one or a short one, the change has to, the action that's taken has to impact solving the mystery. The romance gets in the way. So I hope that makes it a little bit clearer. So if it is mostly romance with a mystery element, here you have to have something each of the twist points have to involve the romance. If it is strong romantic elements, it's going to be before or after, but it is going to, if it is a romance with a mystery element, you have to keep the eye on the romance, and they have to get together and make it so you're not just, Jade, I think in writing romantic, you're writing a romance with mystery elements. Is these two people will get together at the end of the story. And that's what the reader is rooting for. Or you're writing a mystery and the reader is rooting to solve the mystery. And the romance is something that can go on for a next book or multiple books. All right, I have a couple questions. Erin says her friend could betray her. Yes, that could be part of the who do I trust, who do I not trust, but it has to show her meeting the hero here in that, because it's a romance. Okay, Robert, this is why defining your genre is so important. Absolutely. And if you are writing in multiple genres, like you are writing a mystery primary storyline. The romantic element complicates the mystery, but at each of these twist points, it's the mystery that we have to see make a change. If you're writing a romance, it's got to be the romance. Okay, Allie. In Citing Incident, finding out that his one-night stand from a year ago, who never called him back, is his soon-to-be stepsister. Ooh, this is juicy. Both are adults. Choice, he can pursue her because he was interested last year, and that hasn't changed, or he can put aside his attraction for the sake of the family harmony and ignore his own feelings. Okay, so far we're doing good. Then we get to this last. Let me see if I have another version of this. Okay, I'm going to move it here. Oops, no, go back there. This is where the problem happens. He decides. Okay, you're going to tattoo that word somewhere on your body so you can see it. If he's deciding, he's not taking an action yet. But again, you wrapped up the story here. They establish a romantic relationship with the family's blessing. All done. So I'm being facetious, but that action that he takes there is going to cause more problems, not less. So I think and again, as adults, we have a tendency to play down that conflict and make sure everything's going to turn out okay. Now, it's assumed at the end of the book that they will get together. But at this first twist point, a quarter of the way through, it's not going to jump to. Allie says, so if the conflict isn't the family, but is within the relationship, is it just the decision that needs to change? Depending on the length of your story, Allie, you're missing an opportunity. It doesn't have to be the whole family who's against it, but there could be one person, the grandmother, or somebody who tuts it. So don't be willing to throw that away too quickly, that everybody's okay with it, but they have a issue based on their fear about getting together. So that's what Erin's doing in her suggestion. So Allie, what is your word count? Can I ask you that? I love it. Allie's saying, "Ooh, getting ideas now." Thank you. That's Aaron. Yes. Oh, you have 100,000 words? So this first twist point is around 25,000 words. So you're going to have more going on. So the family accepting it so easily doesn't no roadblocks there. Um, that means the whole story is just going to be based on why he is resistant to love or she is resistant to love. Um, so definitely keep the family as a point in here because you're going to need that to fill those word counts. Um, and again, we're getting some great ideas about some Robert saying some very conservative religious family member says they can't have, it could be someone that they expect to be supportive, but not. A friend is pushing them to stay together or get together. They're hesitant because of their fears. So there's a lot to develop. But you got to look at that word count because just his asking her out and she accepting too easily, that's the end of the relationship. It's telling the reader there's nothing holding these two back from getting together. Aaron points out word counts that big can drag out the story. And the reason that they can drag out the story is that these word counts tend to be for fantasy or romantic suspense or big family sagas in order to have all those subplots and secondary storylines. This, as presented, is a novella or a 55, maybe 60,000 word story. So the reason those 100,000 words are needed for people writing with those, because you're bringing the suspense along, you're bringing the relationship along, you're bringing other complications or setting up the secondary storyline that might end up to be their own storyline, that type of thing. So that's a lot of words. And a lot of publishers, those words have to matter. It can't just be filler. Sandy says, I'm so impressed with everyone putting their baby out into the world. Go Bravehearts. Absolutely. It's not easy to do this. So Allie says, I typically cut 20 to 40,000. Okay, that's great. But then so your word count is not really 100,000 then, it's 60,000 if you're cut into 40,000 words, and it's 80,000. Even at 80,000, this would be a long book without stuff coming together. Yeah, Sarah had an idea that they're dating somebody else, so that would definitely add a complication. Patricia says, it's especially hard if you're not a plotter or an outliner. And again, you can use this approach, pants yourself away. You can use this approach to see what might be missing in the story, what's happening where in the story. And it's hard. You know what? Having a child is hard. Falling in love is hard. Life is hard, but that's where we learn. And so don't let that be a reason to throw out anything you're learning here. It is a little bit, it is challenging, but that's why so many, every second person you meet is going to say, I want to write a book. But those that finish the book are in the single digit numbers, percentage wise. And because as you get and looking at it, and if you're writing something that you've always written and always read, you usually can figure out the plot and you just go with it. And you don't need to understand story structure as strongly. You get it intuitively. But if you, at some point in your writing career, want to move from a 50 or 60,000 word book to an 80 or 100,000 word book, then by all means, you're going to find that you want to understand the structure of the story. I like how Erin says we could write the whole story for you here, Allie. Yes, and that's why in a class, you can get some was not going to work for you, but some might really trigger something. And going back to a drawing board is here's your opportunity to see where you can strengthen your words. Watch how you speak to yourself as a writer, because going back to the drawing board, doesn't it make sense to do it before you submit it and possibly get a rejection from a traditional publisher, or before you put it out there and then realize 3, 4, 5 years from now, it wasn't ready? Okay, we're going to be looking tonight for those who do have questions about, are you writing a romance or are you writing romantic elements? There's a bonus live lecture at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So that's going to be 8 p.m. East Coast time. It's going to, so this is where you get an opportunity. So I'm going to post in our Facebook group the lecture. That's where I'll be giving it. But there's one message sent out to you this morning about it, and then one that's going to come just shortly before the lecture happens, so that as a reminder that it is going on. But you can ignore it if you have no questions about it, if you plan to write romance or mystery only forever. But if you want to see how that works, trying to make it just a little bit, give you an opportunity to see why there is a difference there. And this is why I'm often asking you, what is it? So, any other questions here before we call it a day? Yeah, okay, Australia, stay in bed. That's what the purpose of the replay. So you can watch the replay whenever it works. Okay, so again, we have 2 more lectures. I mean, we're really covering a lot of ground here, and I know that's challenging, but that's why it's called a challenge, is that you don't have to do everything this week. You do if you want a chance of feedback from myself or other people. Okay, somebody wants the assignment reviewed. Okay, the assignment it's going to be in the file section again on the page. So Tech, I think, has already loaded it, but let me go back to what it was. What, honey?
Yesterday's video was
Okay. I'm trying to get the exercise 3. So the exercise 3, first part, what does the first plot point, what happened a quarter of the way into your story, involve? That's why those who may have counted their meat instead of really a change to it may want to look at that. Base this on the inciting incident, and it's optional. You can include that inciting incident because it's just a way for you to see if it is following through. And then the third part is to what happens at the midpoint of the story. So we're just trying to make sure that you do have, okay. Sandra, oh, he's honey when you want something.
I'll be posting today's assignment as soon as I get my computer back.
Okay, he's saying he's going to post the assignment today as soon as he gets his computer back. I have his computer now, so he can't do his other work. I think it's an excuse, but I'll let him do it. And Sandy, he'd come in a heartbeat, trust me. So I won't tell him that. So thank you, everybody. I know it can be, Cheryl, you're challenging me a lot. That's so much nicer than saying, Mary, you're a pain in the backside and you're pushing me. When I'm really start challenging you, I start bitch slapping. I have to admit it. But it's because it can make such a difference in our work. And that's what I want to make sure that you have a chance to see and understand. And by seeing so many other people's examples, and thank you to everybody who's giving feedback. And for those getting feedback, take what helped you and what doesn't, just say thank you. So here's to another lecture this evening, and then tomorrow we'll have our day 4. So we'll be at the black moment of your story. Somebody's asking about, did you record last night's session? Yes, it is in the file section at this time. That's what Tech Guy told me. And so, what, honey?
In media.
Oh, it's in media. So it's in media. So yes, we record every session. And then he changes it into a YouTube video, and then it gets uploaded so you can find it in the media files. So expect one every day, about within an hour or so of the end of the course, if I haven't made him do other stuff in the meantime. So thank you for being here, and we will see you, some of you tonight and some of you tomorrow. So take care and have fun with your writing.